And we are up in the MEC. What's going on, everybody? So we got another episode of MEC TV coming at you guys. We're going to be talking about some podcasting stuff today, showing you guys what's up in 2019. If you want to start a podcast, grow a podcast, build a community around it, make some money around it, and have a bunch of fun while you're at it. So super thankful. We got Mr. Jeremy Enns in the house today. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
For sure. And like, this is such a topic that I really love because I before I even got into Facebook group stuff, I had a podcast and there were so many different benefits for it that nobody really talks about. So I'm definitely excited to chat about like some of the benefits of podcasting as well as how to get this stuff going. But before we dive into all that, I want to do two things. I want to figure out who out there in the audience right now has a podcast. If so, type your podcast title in the comments below. Or if you want to start a podcast in 2019 around your brand, around your topics, let me just get a yes down in the comments so you know who's curious about what we got going on today. So this is gonna be a really cool one, and you guys are gonna learn a bunch. So before we dive into all the how-tos and tricks and everything about the Power Pack and the Summit and everything, I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and how you got into podcasting and how podcasting has changed your life as well too.
Awesome. Yeah, changed my life is really the key phrase there. So I'm from Canada originally. I'm currently in South America, as I know you are as well at the time or at the moment. I'm in Peru right now and have been doing the work and travel thing for the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. But I grew up on the prairies in Canada and moved to Vancouver about 8 years ago to go to audio school. So I wanted to work in studios, do the whole record production, sound engineering thing, and finished school there, interned at a big studio, and did that a couple days a week for a year and quickly realized that that was not necessarily the career path that I wanted. Kind of to make it there, you're at the studio 8 a.m. in the morning, there probably every single day of the week or close to until 3 or 4 in the morning when the sessions wrap up. And I just got pretty burnt out working full time and then also interning for free, and kind of had to make a choice there on where I was going to go with that. So I kind of put that to the side and worked a bunch of just manual labor jobs, landscaping, tree planting, all kinds of stuff like that. Did some traveling there for a year and came back after traveling and had started to hear about the online business world and was really curious about how to get established in that. I'd never listened to a podcast at this point. It was, I think, fall 2015. And I started a new job, landscaping, where we could listen to music or whatever at work. And after the first day, I was like, oh, yeah, music's all right. But, you know, I used to listen to audiobooks and stuff like that at a different job. And so I went home and was going to look some stuff up. And then I was like, you know what? I've heard about these podcasts that are out there. I wonder what that's about. And so I went onto iTunes and I looked up like creative business or online business or things like this, and quickly realized that there was, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of shows out there covering the topic. Yeah. And so I started for the next year. I listened to probably like 40 to 50 hours a week at 1.5 or 2 times speed, like just all day, every day at work, consuming as much as possible. And I was trying to build a photography blog up at the time. And somewhere along the way, about 3 or 4 months in, a friend of mine made some offhand comment on his podcast. He has a big show in the travel niche. And he made a comment about his podcast editor, and something like clicked in my brain. And I realized, oh, wait a minute. Like, I went to school for audio engineering. Editing a podcast is like really, really easy compared to running a full studio session. And so I think that night I went home and set up a profile on Upwork and got my first client 2 days later, something like that. And within 6 months had enough clients to quit the day job and go full time on the podcast production. And now we're 3 years into that. And we work with about 30 different clients on weekly production and consulting. And I have a team of 11 of us now who are kind of handling all things podcast production, strategy, all that good stuff.
Nice. Yeah, podcasting is so fun. It's like, I like how you kind of got introduced to it just by having all this extra time where you can go in and listen to stuff. You're like, wait a second, I think I can do some of this. I think I can help people out with this. Let's get this rolling. So you jumped on that opportunity and you started helping people out in growing their podcast. So like, What are some of the things that you help people with? Let's say if I came to you and I had no podcast experience at all.
Yeah.
I said, Jeremy, I know you're the man. How do I start a podcast? What do I do? Like, what would you say?
Well, I would say the first thing is to just get really clear on that idea. A lot of people like have an idea for a show, but it's pretty vague at the start. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people, those are the people who start a show and 7 to 10 episodes in, they no longer have a show. They have a few episodes up on iTunes, but they were never really sure, like, you know, exactly who they should be reaching out to as guests, or exactly what the topics are, or even like how to pitch their show to someone. If somebody asks you like, oh, you have a podcast, what's it about? And I really want to, when I work with people, like that's the first thing, is to come up with like a 10-word phrase, basically, that like you can just like lay that down and it is perfectly clear. Anybody who hears that knows exactly what your show is about, who it's for, what the tone is, which is not an easy task. But I think that it's really, it's worth the time to get that really foundation clear from the start, and really everything becomes a whole lot easier if you're able to come up with that vision right off the start.
Definitely. Absolutely. That clarity is like the biggest piece, because, you know, with anything, you can be like, oh, I want to do this thing. Oh, what are you doing? I don't know. I just kind of want to do the thing. It's like, that's not going to help anybody. It's going to produce really bad shows. So, let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the big mistakes you see new podcast creators making when they start and launch the shows?
I mean, I think there's two sides to this kind of thing. I'm a big strategy and pre-planning kind of proponent, but I think it's also easy. There's a balance to be had there. With some people, they want to go too far, and it's just like, you know, you plan for months and months and months, and it just stretches and stretches, and you never actually launch. So I think you can't go too far that way. But also there's a lot of advice around, you know, just start it and you'll figure it out along the way. And I'm also not a fan of that either. Like I think you need to find a healthy balance in there and really get that clarity up front. And I think one of the things that really happens, this is probably the most common reason why people fail, is they don't put the planning in up front, and they don't specifically with the scheduling. And so they're just going week to week on their episodes, and they don't have any like backlog of content ready. And so you miss 1 week, and you know, then it becomes a whole lot easier to miss that second week, and pretty soon you have no momentum left, and it's just like, well, I never really wanted to podcast anyways.
And especially so many things, you know, it takes that real consistency to build up the audience. Like I remember mine, even though mine wasn't super consistent, we were doing, you know, 1 to 2 a week, and then sometimes it would get skipped, and then we'd pick it back up. But like, you know, from the beginning, with a lot of hype and everything, it started off and then just gradually up and up and up and up and up and up. And people quit, you know, in those first 3 months before they ever hit that curve. And I think that's what's really, really going to keep people, you know, making a much bigger impact, is if they don't switch what they do every 3 months, you know? So that's super important. So like, what are ways that people can be more consistent in how they show up and how they podcast?
I think you really need to like put in the effort, and you know, once you have a few episodes recorded, everybody's eager to get it out there. But like, I always recommend have like 10 episodes recorded. If you're doing a weekly show, that puts you like, you know, 1 to 2 months ahead of yourself kind of. And you know, you don't want to aim to be missing weeks recording episodes. Like, you want to keep that queue going, but like to really have that buffer, that is it opens up a lot of doors, and for promoting like future upcoming episodes well in advance, and like teasing things at the end of episodes if you want to get into, you know, a little bit higher end production and stuff like that, which providing those hooks is a great way. Like, probably anybody who's listened to This American Life or any show like that, at the end of every single episode, they've got a clip that's going to captivate you for the next episode, and you're thinking about it already by the time that episode is finished. And so that's going to keep people coming back. And so I really think that there's a lot of good that comes from being organized and coordinated, and you're able, it's less pressure on you. You know, you're also, for a lot of us doing interview shows, you're relying on guests, and that's another thing where like a guest pulls out at the last minute and you're kind of screwed. Whereas if you've got this, you know, episodes ready in the can, you can just sub another one in there and you're kind of good to go. So I would say that that's really one of the biggest things you can do to avoid a lot of the traps of podcasting there.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And like, one big thing that's been working really well for us is taking these MEC TV episodes and turning them into YouTube videos, into podcasts, grabbing little snippets for LinkedIn and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And because like we have like probably over 150, maybe even over 200 interviews in the last couple of years. So like we have this crazy like backlog of all this stuff, and like my content manager can just go in and like find old stuff that's good interviews and just pull it up as we continue producing more. So there's so much versatility with it too. Like if you do videos, you can turn it into a podcast. If you do a podcast, you can turn it into a blog. There's like that endless amount of content repurposing that people can do. So it's pretty cool. Like, is that something you help out your clients with as well?
Yeah, so we typically, the goal for us, what we provide them is for them to be able to hit record on the podcast, and they've got the blog posts out of it, they've got the podcast, they've got the newsletter. A lot of them do want to do the YouTube reposting as well, and it really is pretty easy. If you're recording like we are through Zoom or something like that, you've got a lot of content available basically. And there's some great tools out there now for free. I know Otter.ai is a great free transcription service that you can have full like episode transcriptions. You need to clean them up a little bit. A lot of people actually don't even, because they're close enough, and you get a lot of SEO value out of them.
Huh? I'm gonna write that one down in the comments for everybody watching and for myself. That sounds pretty cool. I
think you get like 80 hours of free transcription per month, which is, for most people, they're not going to go through that much. So that's a great one that I've been using recently and has been really good. So yeah, definitely check that one out if you're looking to kind of supplement your content there, but don't want to spend, whatever, like $1 a minute on a human-powered transcription.
Yeah, so what is that? I'm going to do that math real quick. So 80 hours. 80 times 60. That's going to cost you $4,800 a month on Rev or free on Otter.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Tough decision there.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool though. That's a good little tip. And anybody who has other video content podcasts can do that. Or even like one thing I found is if I have an idea, I just want to talk about it instead of write it. I just hit voice record on my iPhone. And then from there, we can get that transcription, turn that into a podcast. There's just a million ways to spin it for sure. So that's pretty cool. What are some of the other ways you're doing like repurposing?
A lot of stuff with like audiograms. People are probably seeing floating around there, especially on Instagram, just pulling clips out of episodes and creating, longer. Those can be like, there's a great tool called Headliner, which allows you to really easily create these the audiograms, which are, for anybody who doesn't know what those are, it's like an audio clip playing over like an image basically, and it kind of tricks a lot of platforms into who are like either, I guess it's more like for an image-based platform service like Facebook, you can't share audio clips, but it allows you to share bits of your episode, and you can create like
kind of turn it into a video, huh?
Yeah, you can create like 10, 20-minute long audiograms, or a lot of the ones we'll do then for like Instagram stories, the 15 seconds or 30 seconds on Instagram. So you can do a whole bunch of stuff there. And I've seen some people get really creative with those if you want to put some more work into it. We prefer for most of our clients to keep it more straightforward and simple. Obviously, it costs less for them than getting into almost video production level type stuff there. But that's probably the most common one is creating social graphics, audiograms, YouTube, posting that to different places on whether that's LinkedIn or their blog or whatever other platforms they're active on.
Cool. That's some powerful stuff. Yeah, I love that about the redistribution. Create it once, get it out all over the place. So, hey, everybody out there watching, if that was helpful, if you guys want to, check out some of this stuff like the Otter and the Audiogram, just let us know in the comments. We want to make sure you're not just listening, being entertained, that you're actually going to go do something with it. We don't want to just sit here and chat all day without you guys getting some value out of it. So if you guys are getting some value out of this stream so far, just let us know in the comments. Just type value down below. And I know I am. I'm writing down both of those tools. So we got Otter.ai. And how do we find the Audiogram one? Is it just audiogram.com or?
It's called Headliner. Headliner.app.
Nice. I'll put that one in. Cool. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So I know you've been cooking up a whole ton of stuff with all the power packs. So for everybody, I put it in the description, said if you guys want to look at a whole bunch of podcasting resources, go ahead and just type Power Pack down below, and we'll show you what we got cooking up. But I would love to see like a little preview from you. Do you want to go into the screen share and just like talk about the Power Pack for a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So let me just here on Zoom. All right. Okay, you got my screen here?
Got it.
All right. So basically, the podcast Power Pack is a bundle sale featuring. Hey, there's Arne. Look at that.
Oh, hey.
Featuring 20 different online content producers and who have come together, and we've organized this bundle sale where basically it's over 3,000. I think it's actually over $3,500 worth of courses and resources and all kinds of amazing stuff for anybody who's either looking to grow their podcast or looking to get into it, which for 5 days only is going to be available for $300. So really, like, to me, when I started this thing, I kind of wanted to make it basically a no-brainer that if you had a podcast, you really couldn't afford to pass up this deal. And one of the things that I see a lot of people who maybe don't have the business background, like I know a lot of the people watching this are probably in a pretty good position, but a lot of people who start out podcasting have never had an online business, or they've kind of dabbled, but they've never quite got it right. And so there's so many areas where and information about running an online business where they've got the audio down, they've got a solid handle on producing their podcast, but they're not sure how to promote or build an audience or, sell products or come up with products even, and capitalize on a lot of that stuff. So really the Power Pack is aimed at kind of 4 key categories in addressing for podcasters or people who want to get into podcasting. And so those are production, marketing, monetization, and the workflow or the system side of things. And so those are kind of the 4 key areas where I see a lot of people might have like a pretty solid grip on 1 or 2 of those, but they don't really have the whole picture together.
Yeah, totally get that. Because, like there's so many people out there who even have very successful shows, audiences, Instagram, Facebook group, whatever, and they're like not making much money out of it. And it really sucks to see that, because like we all know how much time and effort and energy it takes to create these channels, maintain them, build a community, build an audience. Hell yeah, we want to get rewarded. Let's grow our business too, So I want you guys to, if you guys missed it earlier, if you guys have a podcast currently, go ahead and just leave the title of that podcast in the comments down below. And if you want to start a podcast, just let me get a yes down in the comments. And guys, stay up to date on this Power Pack stuff, because I know like when I got started out in podcasting, I was diving in. I was soaking up all these free resources, and it was like very contradictory, and I wasn't really getting the help that I needed. And I messed up on a lot of things. I did right on a lot of things on the stuff that I, paid for help for. But a lot of things I had to figure out on my own, and things just weren't as perfect as they could have been. And like this kind of a resource pack would be immensely valuable, because you'll be able to see all of these different things. And like, so it's funny, people say like, oh, I don't want to just, get another online course and another few online courses. But like, I probably have like, I don't know, 30 different online courses. And I go back into them all the time. Like I try and study at least a little bit every day of what I'm working on. And this bundle, like you want to scroll through some of these little trainings? Yeah. And
like, I want to point out here too, that like there's multiple, I think there's like 4 or 5 almost products. We got like the prices, and there's no trickery here. The only catch is that it's available for 5 days. These are like full products that are amazing. But like the Savvy Social School membership, like this is worth more than the price of the pack on its own. Same with this one, worth the same amount as the pack. And we've got a few of those, this one again. And so there's like multiple products which are worth more than the value of the pack. So even if you use like 1 or 2 of these, of the 20 plus resources, like you're getting a steal of a deal. And like I said, like what my goal from the start was really to make it something that just doesn't make sense kind of not to get if you're into podcasting or looking to start a show.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it'll be a no-brainer, because like with all this stuff in here, it's like as entrepreneurs, we encounter dozens of problems every single day, and we're just constantly solving them. And a lot of times we don't know where to look when we hit those roadblocks. We start Googling stuff, start checking stuff out. But having a resource bank like this is seriously powerful. So I highly suggest you guys go check out podcastpowerpack.com, see what they got going on. And when are the dates for this?
So it's going to be live from February 25th to March 1st. So that's the last week in February, just 5 days. And then it's gone forever. Never will be available again.
Why?
Well, it's such a good deal, for a lot of people, some of the contributors, it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to be offering like this kind of deal. Like she's offering basically $70 off of her membership for anybody here. So it's people have to act. That's really what we want, is people who are going to take action and are going to use the courses, and who are committed to growing their shows and starting shows. And so it's not something that any of us as the contributors, we really want to be helping people out who are ready to take that next step and are willing to take action, which I know is what separates people who actually succeed at starting shows or businesses or whatever it is. It's getting your feet moving and taking action on the ideas in your head.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and this will help out a lot. So outside of just the course Power Pack and everything else, I want to talk a little bit about the future of podcasting. So if you want to X out that screen share for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that has been on my mind in the past was I started seeing how more and more and more people were listening to podcasts, creating podcasts, and you could, create your own channel. Like you don't need to, get on TV. You don't need to do all this stuff. You don't need to even pay for ads. And that's why I loved being able to start a podcast was all I had was a mission and a voice and, a small audience, and I was good to go. I was good to start. And that's kind of how I've seen podcasts coming up so far. But what do you think is the future of podcasting in 2019 and beyond?
Well, I think a lot of people kind of feel, at least I'm very, embedded in the podcasting world. And there's, I think, a sense of a lot of people who are just getting started, almost that they've missed the boat, kind of like the heyday was, 3 years ago or something like that. And I really don't think that's the case. I think that podcast listenership as a whole is still a fairly small, it's less than 50% of, the population of the US has even ever listened to a podcast or something like that. And specifically when you're looking at regular podcast listeners, I think there's a lot of room to grow. There was a big announcement just today, actually, that Spotify bought Gimlet Media, which is one of the big podcasting networks, and another podcasting host. So I think they're really going to be pushing that. And to this point, Apple's been kind of the big player in the game, but both Google and Spotify are getting into it. So, with companies like that putting some serious money into it, that it's going to be growing. They've got the information apparently that it's going to be growing and it's worthwhile. So I would definitely tell people that it's not going away. You haven't missed the boat yet. I think things are going to continue to get more niche. And I think there's a ton of untapped niches out there that, some of the most interesting people I've met through podcasting, they have small audiences on obscure topics, and they're monetizing the crap out of it. And it makes you shake your head kind of. You're like, wow, how can somebody who gets 100 downloads an episode make a full-time living off of their podcast?
Yeah.
And there's ways to do it if you're smart about it. So I don't think that that just by looking at what's out there already and thinking it needs to be some broad appeal topic, that if you're not into that, if that's not something that you have knowledge on, that a podcast isn't for you. So I think that niche is going to be huge. I think there's going to be a lot more in terms of audio dramas, which is really cool to me that there was the era how many decades ago of radio dramas and things like that, and that seems to be having a real resurgence. And you're seeing some big name actors and actresses getting involved in podcasting and a lot more narrative storytelling type stuff, which is really cool. I think the production value is going up as more companies get involved. So I think that, that's something people need to think about. For a long time, I think there was kind of the generally accepted, mantra that content is king, right? Which it is. But I think a lot of people kind of were of the mindset, like my audio quality doesn't need to be that great as long as my content is good. And I think that's kind of quickly going away. And I don't think that should scare people off. Like it's easy and cheap enough to get really great sounding audio. You don't need to like be renting out a studio or anything like that. You can spend $100 and get a decent mic. And, you know, as long as you're kind of mindful of where you're recording and do a bit of education around that, you know, you can have a great sounding podcast. But I think that the bar is going to continue to be raised. And I think really kind of like bringing it back to what we were talking about at the start, like it's going to be essential to have like a really clear vision about like what you're saying and how you're presenting it as more and more people get involved with starting podcasts and listening to podcasts. One of the other things that I'm is one of my core beliefs around podcasting is that even if there's like, you know, 50 other shows on a topic, I think a lot of us who listen to shows, you know, you go through like 5 different podcasts and they're all saying the same thing and none of them like really click with you. And then you hear one and it's often the host, it's the personality, and you connect with them for whatever reason and you just become a diehard fan. And so I think like if you're doing it well and you're clear on what your value is and what you're presenting, your unique voice is going to bring people in. I don't think it's too crowded. I think there's still lots of room for it to grow and for new people to be brought into the fold and new voices, new messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one thing that I found was really crazy because like I started my show pretty much 3 years ago on the dot. And I still am communicating, working with people who were in that original like 100 listener bunch. And that's just like, that just makes me so grateful. So, like, isn't that crazy that somebody can run into me, you know, off an iTunes search or whatever it was 3 years ago, and they still show up and we still chat and all that. So it's like, it's been amazing to have seen that impact. And also, I think the biggest hidden benefit that people know about podcasting, especially as an entrepreneur, is the ability to network.
Yeah.
Because you can, you know, you can go find your idols in your space and you can say, hey, I want to talk to you for an hour. They're gonna be like, hell no. Be like, I want to talk to you for an hour on my podcast. They're like, okay. You know, it's insane. So it's like, it's such a cool opportunity to, you know, share their message, share their mission, you know, network, chat with people. I've also ended up doing business with a lot of people that I've, you know, interviewed and that I've been interviewed by. So for an entrepreneur, like building a podcast, if you guys don't have any other media channels right now or a Facebook group or any of that stuff, seriously consider it. Get the Power Pack. Go check it out at podcastpowerpack.com and get going because it can open so many doors. I really want that for you guys out there listening. And it's easier than people think. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. You know, you and I both know as producers, but it's easier than people think. I don't want people to, you know, get too crazy of a headache thinking, oh, it's gonna be so much work. It is work, but it's also worth it.
Yep, definitely. Kind of like to your point there about the networking, I've actually worked with a couple people who started shows for the sole purpose of networking. They almost didn't care about the growth. They didn't care about monetizing it. Yeah. The only reason they cared about the download numbers was that they'd have something to like pitch to potential guests. And a couple people have said, you know, the whole reason I'm doing this is just to have an excuse to reach out to people I wouldn't be able to talk to otherwise. I've seen like careers transformed from, you know, reaching out to people who were, you know, a few rungs up on the ladder and that they were kind of intimidated of, never thought they'd get a chance to talk to, struck up a friendship, and amazing things have happened from that. And that's not necessarily the exception to the rule. Like I've seen it happen many times. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And like, I think anybody can do it. Really, anybody can do it. You don't have to have a bunch of experience. You don't have to have the network already. It's like, you don't even have to have a very popular show to start and get people on. So get to it, guys. You know, pick up that Power Pack, podcastpowerpack.com. Go check it out. Sign up for the details and get it started. So let's see. Any final advice we have for all of our aspiring and current podcasters out there?
I would say set a date. I generally tell people 3 months is a good amount of time to get everything lined up and going for a podcast. But you know, pick a date that works for you that has some urgency, but is not like next week. So you have time to do strategizing, come up with your vision. Something that I'll mention for anybody who's looking to start, if you go to podcastpowerpack.com/launch, there's a really great roadmap that has basically, it's like a 30-page document of all the questions that clients have ever asked me about launching. So you can get that there, a ton of great stuff in there. So that's going to kind of walk you through the whole process. And yeah, pick a date and get working on it if that's something that in 2019 has been a goal for you or something that you've put off for the past year or two.
Nice. Good stuff, man. All right. I'm excited for this one. Gonna stay tuned and check out what you got going on. So thanks so much for swinging by MEC TV, man. Always a pleasure. And any last bits of advice for everybody out there?
No, thanks so much for having me. If anybody wants to connect more, I've got a Facebook group called Cut the Bullshit Podcasting. You can find me in there, and we've got a really great community of podcasters there. So come ask your questions wherever you're at in your journey, and it'll be a lot of fun. Awesome.
Good stuff, guys. Everybody go check out the group. Say thanks to Jeremy, and tune in for next time for some more MEC TV. Find us on iTunes. Find us on YouTube, Millennial Entrepreneur Community, wherever you're at. We got plenty more of this for you. So catch you all later, and have a good one.